Well, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our very last session of Carl Bloom Associates Public Media Summit. Before we get started with our rapid fire 30 ideas in 30 minutes, I wanted to let you know that Jeff Regan from WETA will be joining us again after this session. So the session ends at 3:30 and he's going to come on at 3:30. He wants to address some questions that were posed yesterday during his passport session. So with that, let's move on to the 30 ideas in 30 minutes and then we'll hear from Jeff. Thank you all so much for attending. See you shortly. Hi, hello, and welcome to 30 Ideas in 30 Minutes. I'm Christina McPhillips, and I'm joined by Jodi Scheib. Hi, Jodi.
Hello.
Hello, and we are from Carl Bloom Associates, and we want to thank you so much for attending the summit over the last 2 days. We really enjoyed having you. We hope you learned a lot. This is the last session, and so with that, we'll go ahead and get started with some rapid fire ideas that you can take back to your station. All right, Jodi, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Christina. As Christina mentioned, what we're hoping to do in the next 30 minutes is to just share 30 ideas or so, some that we've heard in the last few days throughout this summit, and we're just going to be reiterating them, the ideas that have stayed with us. Others, maybe just a reminder of something you've known for a while, or if you're new to the system, maybe it's the first time you're hearing about it. But we'll go pretty quickly. You'll definitely receive the slides after the summit is over, and if you have any questions, as she said, you can certainly reach out. All right, so with that, let's get started. Idea number one is to think forward. Don't always necessarily think big. We've seen a lot of organizations hesitant to try any new initiatives because they think it may not swing the needle all that much. But instead, we encourage you to look at the potential for new initiatives. Look at what it may need down the road and focus on diversifying your revenue streams. So you may be moving the needle a little bit by one technique and a little in another technique, and at the end of the day, it will lead to a bigger increase in overall revenue. So think forward, not necessarily big. Next up, we have go virtual. After this past year, we know many of us were forced to look into virtual alternatives for special events, for donor communication, for cultivation. And I think one thing we know for certain is that virtual is here to stay. A lot of organizations have started coming up with ideas, and we'd like you to consider adding them to your plan, such as a donor conference call. That's where you invite your major donors or other special groups to a virtual event to tell them what's going on at the station. Consider creating virtual special events and emailing your donors close to the event so that they know when it's coming. Look at all of the ways you can utilize the new virtual tools that are out there. Next up is texting. Texting is something we've been trying with several of our stations with great success over the past several months, and different stations are using them in different ways, so we're going to kind of go through that, hopefully give you some ideas of how you can roll texting into your program. Some stations are using them for renewals, so the language would be your membership expires tomorrow, click here to renew today. That's been quite successful for some stations. Sustainer Recapture is another way stations are utilizing texting, letting donors know that you are unable to process their credit card. Doing so immediately lets them renew their status so you don't miss a month of payment. So that can be a timely way to connect with your sustainers. Adding Tuneins. We want to make sure that our viewership remains high, that we're driving our donors and our members to watch shows that we think will be of interest to them. Texting is a great way to do that, perhaps starting in advance of one of the upcoming pledge programs that are coming for the March drive, texting your audience, letting them know what time it's on. And then at the conclusion of the show, texting them again, asking them for a donation. Next up is passport information. Ask your donors if they want to receive information via text about what's coming up on Passport, what's perhaps coming off of Passport, so they can make sure to watch it. Keeping your donors informed and constantly driving them to Passport will keep them on your file as active members. At the end of last year, we saw great success in Giving Tuesday texts, as well as the calendar year end. We ran major campaigns for many stations that saw, pretty nice lift in their Giving Tuesday efforts, including money coming in directly through texting. Calendar year end added that perfect timing and sense of urgency to the text campaigns that were happening then as well. And matching gift campaigns. That's one of the best uses of texting because it has the urgency, it has the compelling why you're asking your donors to give. So if you have any matching gift campaign coming up, consider adding texting in. And I mean, that's just a handful of ways that you can roll texting into your program and that we've tried for stations successfully. So we encourage you to look at that. But I know what you're thinking, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. Where am I going to come up with the money for this? All of these new initiatives. Well, as Deb Ashmore said yesterday, a lot of stations did extremely well in FY20, and they're set for a record-breaking year in FY21. And I know many of you had to shift some of that money into some of the areas that perhaps did not hit budget. Perhaps that was corporate support or special events. But if possible, I would encourage you to invest some of that budget surplus into these new initiatives, into looking towards the future. Circle back to the first slide, at what new initiatives can help your stations engage, communicate, and fundraise from your members. And next up, Christina.
Thanks, Jodi. So voice broadcast thank you calls, I really love these. This is a way to thank your donors immediately after their gift, and you can even thank them as soon as 48 hours after you enter the gift in the database. It's an excellent retention strategy. It reminds someone that you really do care about the gift that they made, and it's just such a good touch point, and it's really cost effective. I love voice broadcast. The next one is recommending that you record a behind the scenes video of what's going on at your station. Donors love that exclusive behind the scenes look to see how you craft content. Something simple, handheld, of course on your cell phone, can be really easy, and you can post it really fast on social media. It's just great content to be putting out there on a regular basis, and it makes them feel special. I want to offer up the idea of interrupting a newsletter with an ask. So if your organization sends regular cultivation style communications like newsletters, you can interrupt them once in a while with a quick apology for the interruption and a fundraising ask on top. And you might have seen this on Wikipedia. They do this at year end, where at the very top of the page, when you go on, you can see that they actually say, sorry to ask this, or sorry to interrupt what you're doing right now, but did you know that if everyone gave $5, we would cover our annual expenses? So a little blurb or a sticker on your newsletter, that's something that we really recommend, and we like to do with our newsletters at CBA, something we're starting in the future. Great idea. And then I want to recommend that you perform small tests to learn big things. So testing something small, perhaps it's emojis in a subject line, or a black and white photo versus color in an email, a minor change in an ask string on some kind of form or on online form, so that's in the mail or online, to learn something new but with lower stakes. So you're not really taking a lot of risk and you're not spending any money, but you're making some slight changes for learning's purposes. The next one I want to share is something that we've seen ourselves when we were making a donation to a nonprofit. So it's an example of an additional gift you can ask for when someone is about to make their online donation. If you have the option of, this is actually a pop-up when we're about to submit the gift. So this pop-up asks someone to become a sustainer or to keep the gift a one-time gift. If you can get someone to become a sustainer, that's really fantastic. And so I would look into your software, to your website, and see if it's possible for you to make this pop-up happen for you. It could be a great test. And next, Jodi, I want to ask you, tell us about slide or idea number 10.
Sure, this is an oldie but a goodie, and I think it's something that's important to remind folks of every once in a while, which is to take a look at the query that's pulling your acquisition direct mail suppression file. We've seen files growing considerably, the suppression file growing considerably over the last several years. So people are sending everybody in their Lapse pool, and stations' Lapse pools are getting much bigger. So what you really want to send in your suppression file is you want to include only your active donors, donors who are being mailed a Lapse effort in that campaign, and any other person you have on file that you absolutely would not want to receive a direct mail piece should they be on a rental file. What we're seeing is stations sending us names that have been lapsed 8, 10 years to suppress from acquisition, and those donors aren't getting any opportunity to rejoin because they're not getting a lapsed mail piece, they're being suppressed from acquisition. So they may be really good prospects, but they're being suppressed. So take a look at your file pool, talk to your agency partners about what should be on your file pull. It really could make all the difference in acquisition response rates for your station. Next up is to buddy up. Highly recommend, and this is really for people who are newer to the system or who may not have been able to get to a conference back when conferences were around, and you haven't found your network of folks at stations. I suggest you hunt for them. Look for folks at other stations that are like yours. Maybe you're a university joint licensee. Try and find another one. Maybe your biggest challenge is figuring out your CRM. Reach out to your CRM company, find out what other stations are using their platform, and buddy up with them to help answer some of your CRM questions. Perhaps you're a border station struggling with some passport messaging. Find another border station. I know that you've been unable to go to a conference. Maybe you haven't met anybody. Both Christina and I encourage you to give us a call, tell us about your station, what you're looking for, and we're happy to make an introduction to somebody throughout the system. But I cannot tell you how valuable this will be for your journey in public media. Next up, going back a little bit to direct mail and to email, is to model your deep lapsed file to select the best prospects. Most stations, if not all, are seeing larger and larger deep lapsed files by the nature of how deep lapse works. And you can't mail all of them. And they've been relying on things like RFM, or recency, frequency, monetary, or amount, to select the best of the best deep lapsed folks. But there are other more sophisticated ways to model your deep lapsed file. And we've done a ton of testing over the years to identify the best models. And they really do help identify out of your deep lapse file who is most likely to respond to a direct mail piece. So if you haven't tried modeling your deep lapse, talk to, again, your agency partner, your CRM folks, whoever you can find to suggest how to model your deep lapse file. There's some good people in there that would want to rejoin. Number 13, invest in recapturing your loss sustainers early, or as we heard, I think earlier today, before they lapse at all. Identify every month you should be running a file of donors whose credit cards are going to expire the following month, of donors who were unable to be processed this month. The goal here is to remind you that the sooner you get these sustainers back, A, the more likely they are to come back. The sooner you contact them, the more likely they are to come back. And B, the less money you have lost from these folks. So really look at ways, whether it's emailing, texting, calling. This is an area that you want to invest in. I know that, having somebody call these sustainers may seem like an extra expense that you don't have, but it's certainly one that will pay off in the long term. Should be a monthly campaign. And next up is segment out your passport-only donors. So donors who have only ever given to passport should be treated as a whole new segment of your donor file. Perhaps they should not receive all of your ad gift appeals, or if they lapsed, they should have a very specific track that they go on to recapture them. Passport-only donors are pretty specific in how they've chosen to communicate with your station and engage with your station. And you know some things about the passport donors that can help you retain them or recapture them should they lapse. So evaluate their response to certain efforts separately, communicate with them separately, being more online, more texting for these folks, and look at all of your relationships. They should not go into your typical donor pool for communication. Christina, I'll throw it to you for number 15.
Sure. So I love this next one. We recommend sending an email from a host to your members. So you probably have plenty of recognizable names of on-air hosts. And if you have an email come from them to your donors, they're more likely to get opened. If they come during a pledge campaign and they've just heard someone on air talking about the campaign, that's an excellent strategy. Perhaps it's during Giving Tuesday. Perhaps at year end, but you really want to switch out some of your hosts being the senders of the email. We know that when you repeatedly have the same person send an email again and again, it starts to fall on deaf ears. So this is a fun change, and I would say use it sparingly, and it might get some good attention for you. The next one is really simple, so simple. Give your donation button a color refresh. It doesn't matter if it's orange or red or green or a rainbow or a specific time of year's color, just switch it up to something bright and eye-catching. We recommend that you actually use the word donate as opposed to support us or give now, things like that. Donate is the word that is short and to the point and universal. So give your donation button a color refresh, but also keep the word donate. I want to say that I love Google Grants. They are my favorite thing right now. I've learned so much about them over the last couple months of working with our colleague Tracy Sod, who had a session earlier today. And if you missed that, let me know. I would be very happy to send it to you. But I really want to recommend that you're taking advantage of a Google grant. If you're not using the grant, if you're not maximizing the $10,000 a month, or even if you're not getting bonus ad spend, and that means that Google will say, you run your Google grant so well that instead of $10,000, we're going to give you extra money. This month, you have $20,000 to spend. And we've seen a lot of our clients getting that because their grant accounts are run really well. If these things aren't happening for you, then I encourage you to go watch Tracy's session from earlier today. It was our Google Ad Grant session, how you can maximize your returns and minimize your efforts. Such a good session. And then I want to talk a little more about Google Grants, because as I said, I love them. When starting a Google Grant, as Tracy said, there's a trick. You could get tricked. Do not add your credit card info. This is something that seems like a no-brainer. You're supposed to add your credit card info when you start a new account, but not in the case with your Google Grant. Again, if you didn't get to see the session from earlier today, just send me an email at Christina@carlbloom.com, and I'd be really happy to send you the link for that. And one final thought on Google Grants, remember the funnel. We talked about that today. If you remember during our session, the Google Ad Grant presentation that I've been referencing, you'll remember the importance of the funnel, where we learned how you can lead your online prospects to become donors by combining your Google Ad Grant and Google paid ads. There are specific things that an ad grant does, that a Google grant does, that paid ads don't need to cover. So you can keep some of your paid ad money to the side for special things like paid search ads and video ads. Search ads and video ads are things that the Google grant doesn't do. So let these two things work for you. Google ad grants are free. That's $10,000 of free money. Let that work for you for free. And then you can put your budget into the paid Google ads. And at CBA, we also use YouTube ads, Facebook, Instagram, and more to get people down the funnel. And those are things that you can do too. So another thing in the online world, I want to recommend kind of an old school strategy that you shouldn't overlook. You really should keep or add a newsletter sign up to your website. If this is something that you've kind of taken off over the years, put it back on. These are people who are telling you that they're interested in you and what's going on with you. And if they're not already donors, these are people that you can convert. And I would make sure that as soon as they sign up, you have a path to lead them towards getting a newsletter or finding out information or welcoming them right away. Don't let somebody flounder. Get in touch with them with some good content immediately. All right, final one for me, and then I'll throw it back to Jodi for a few minutes. So change up the face of your organization. And I referenced this a few minutes ago in sending emails from an on-air host, but this also applies to changing your signer or who posts on social media, or do a social media takeover from one of your on-air hosts or another media personality in your area to give your donors a different face and voice. If we're constantly hearing from one signer or constantly getting emails from one person or there's constant posts from one person on social media, it's very easy to just get bored. I'm sure we all have emails that come to our inbox, and because they're from the same person again and again, you automatically delete them and eventually maybe you unsubscribe, but freshen it up a little bit with some new faces. All right, Jodi, over to you.
All right, thanks, Christina. And back to direct mail. I think we're seeing a lot of stations who stay with the same quantities for acquisition and lapse efforts separately, as they've done for many years. They're just consistently sending the same quantities. We'd like to encourage you to think about the campaigns a little bit differently. Start the year building a plan, look at your retention rate, know how many donors you're going to lose throughout the year, and then look at how many donors you need to gain or rejoin in the year to hit your overall member count goals. So if you need 2,000 new donors to stay flat or grow 2% or whatever your goal happens to be, figure out how many of those need to come from mail, and then build a plan that combines acquisition and lapse, where you're sorting performance by acquisition rental list and lapse segment and prioritizing from there. The goal, of course, is to have the lowest cost to acquire or recapture a donor while acquiring and recapturing the most donors to grow your overall file. So your strategy, your list selection should include both the acquisition list and the lapse segment list rolled into one. Next up, we have expand community partnerships. And this came from Aisha at Atlanta Public Broadcasting earlier, where she talked about leveraging, especially in 2020 and throughout the year, different community partnerships, whether they're with other nonprofits, whether they're with some of your corporate support folks. Leverage those community partnerships in joint efforts, in joint fundraising campaigns, and it'll help you reach a whole new audience for your fundraising campaigns. Next, extend your PreDrive campaigns. Another idea that we got from Aisha. Many stations have started some PreDrive campaigns, encouraging donors to give before the drive. This is specifically looking at radio, so that they can reach their overall campaign goal early. Consider extending that. If you're currently doing 3 or 4 days, make it 7 days. Encouraging those pre-drive gifts will help give you momentum leading into the drive and help you reach the goal of the campaign. Next up, we have take advantage of the PBS Prosper file. Christina?
Yes, so some of you may have heard of the PBS Prosper file and you might use it, but if you have not, this is a file from PBS that contains a lot of your prospect information from people that have downloaded different PBS apps. You have the ability to access this, and if you don't know how, all you have to do is reach out to PBS to ask them how to do it. There's some overlap with these people and some of the folks that are already on Passport, so you'll need to do a deduping process, but this could provide you with some really good prospect names, and you want to start to treat these people as if you would any other, prospect. You want to provide them with great content, things that they're interested in. They have already indicated to you that they're interested in your services because they gave their email when downloading an app. So I very much recommend that you take advantage of this. It's not something CBA has access to, but it is something that you can get through PBS if you haven't used it before. And I want to, on the next one, thank Allie from KPBS so much. She gave us this great idea. A great example, she said in one of our sessions that you can ask your prospects to take a selfie with your premiums and post those. She called it meeting your prospects where they are. So if your prospects are younger, if they're on social media, send a request out to them to post a video of themselves or a photo of themselves holding your tote bag or where they've seen your tote bag around town, those kinds of things. That's good free content, it's engagement, and it's where those younger donors are. You want to make sure that you are thinking of fresh and creative ways to get in front of them. So this one is a lot of fun. Thanks, Allie. And Jodi, I wanted to ask you about sustainer upgrades.
Well, of course, we could not have a 30 idea session without talking about sustainers at least more than once or twice. Sustainer files are growing across the board at stations. We want to really encourage you to look at how your sustainers are upgrading and how they're converting to EFT and add those initiatives into your plan. As you grow sustainers, as you all know, I'm sure, your ad gift pool of donors shrinks oftentimes, your renewal pool shrinks. You want to make sure you're still contacting them, encouraging them to upgrade, creating a a case for giving, a case for upgrading, and converting those credit card sustainers to become EFT payers. They're a much higher retention, as you all know. So look at where you can add those into your plan. Most of our stations are doing at least 2 upgrades and 1 to 2 EFT conversions per year, and have not seen any, lift in cancellations. I know there's always a concern that people are going to cancel their membership when you contact your sustainers. We have not seen that significantly in the past few years, so encourage you to reach out to your sustainers and ask them to upgrade. Next is about renewals, because although the pool of renewals is shrinking for stations who are growing their sustainer universe, renewals are still the best ROI campaign that you do. They are the heart and soul of any membership program. You should be evaluating and updating your renewal copy and results by segment several times per year. Especially take note when something significant happens. COVID, I think all of our stations, and I'm hoping all of you, the very first thing you did was take a look at your renewal copy and update the language in there. The election was another opportunity for stations to update their renewal copy to really make it reflect what's going on in your community and take advantage, and that's a terrible way to put it, but take advantage of current situations that really highlight the unique offer that public media provides. And you should be highlighting that in your renewal copy, not just direct mail, but email as well. And when you're evaluating results, evaluate the results not only by effort, but also by segment. Are you sending your one-time pledge folks a 10-effort series when they've stopped responding after 5 efforts? Really break it down and look at each response rate by effort to determine whether or not more communication would be beneficial or less communication by segment. Renewals, again, the lifeblood of any station, and I think are often left to run on their own. But just a reminder to give your renewal series a little love.
So next up, we want to encourage you, or we want to say encourage prospects to download the PBS video app first and then do a passport ask. So we want to pull them in with free content on the PBS video ask. And I talked a lot about content, and content is king, of course, that's the saying, but that's videos and photos and other interesting things. But videos are such a hot item. You have to think to yourself, you probably are on social media at least once a day, watching a video of someone else doing something, or cat videos or silly videos. People love videos, they get views, they are such a great way to pull in people. And so the same thing applies to getting someone to download the PBS video app. You want to ask them to do that first. And then at a later time, you can reach out to them and actually ask them to join Passport, which is a monetary thing. So you've enticed them with something, you've turned them from someone who's mildly interested into someone who's more interested. And then once you've got them more interested, you want to ask them for a donation to join Passport, essentially making them a monetary member, which is really, really very important. And then our final slide, Jodi, all you.
It was something that Allie said that stuck with me, and I thought was a great way to end the session. Design it and do it. Don't wait for perfection. We see so many stations, what is it they say in Washington, getting caught up in committee. That's what they say, right? In DC, Christina, you're from there. That's what they say, right? Things getting caught up in committee.
Sure.
So these are the great ideas. We'll see a great idea from a membership person, but it never comes to fruition because they're either striving for perfection, or there are so many different decision makers at the station that by the time they get all of the buy-in from all of the different decision makers, the opportunity for that project has passed. So as Allie recommended, and we really love this idea, consider creating smaller committees with 1 or 2 trusted employees who have the authority to make the campaign decisions. Great ideas. We're really missing out on some real great ideas for tests and for projects because we're waiting for everything to line up perfectly, and there are too many decision makers at stations and things just aren't getting done. So design it and do it. That's our final slide for this 30 ideas in 30 minutes.
What a great way to end. And I'll say to Jodi that that was one of my favorites also. So let's come on back and we will say a very good goodbye to everybody. We thank you so much for attending our summit. We had a great time spending time with public media stations around the country. We hope that you enjoyed learning from Jeff Regan and Deb Ashmore and Tracy Sod and many of the other people that spoke over the last 2 days. Jodi, any parting thoughts?
No, but thank you all so much, and we cannot wait to see you in person again at a conference at some point in the future.
Yes. If you have any questions, oh, I'm sorry, Jodi, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, please let there be a conference soon. I miss you guys.
I miss airplanes. I can't help myself. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about during the entire session, please let us know. We'd be happy to tell you more about our 30 ideas in 30 minutes. And if you want to ask us any questions or ask questions to the people that spoke during the summit, please let Jodi or I know and we'll get you that information. And with that, we'll say goodbye to everyone. We hope to see you soon. Stay safe. Hi, friends. We are going to stay on for just a few more minutes. We've got Jeff Regan who's coming on. He'd love to address one of the questions that came through during his session yesterday. Jeff, you should have the ability to turn on your webcam and speak with us now. There you are.
My webcam on?
Yep, we see you, we hear you, everything is great. So I'll just let you chat and I'll pop back in if needed.
Sure, thanks, Christina. So, Christina, just one question. Is this a similar set of people to the people who were on the session yesterday?
Yes, it does. When we look at the list, it looks to be a very similar group of people, almost exactly the same.
Super. So, hey everybody again, and thanks to Christina and Jodi for letting me join you all for just a few minutes. Last night I received a thoughtful email pointing out rightly that I deflected a question around diversity in programming. And I appreciate the person pointing that out. Frankly, I think it's true. I did not deflect it because it's not an important issue. It's an incredibly important issue, and one that we spent a lot of time thinking about at WIDA, and I imagine a lot of your stations have as well. But because rather I was feeling time pressure and I wasn't quite sure, I knew we had a few minutes left, and I did not have in my mind how to tee up that conversation in a effective way at that moment. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to just sort of briefly answer it now, and I'm happy to, whatever appropriate time through CBA or elsewhere to talk about it as much as people want. Diversity in programming, DEI issues overall are very important to WIDA. And in particular, we have a sort of subcommittee of our DEI council focused on diversity in programming. I can only share what we're doing at WIDA. We don't claim to have all the answers by any means, and we'd love to hear what other stations are doing, but I can tell you what we are doing. So, the first thing we did is across our 5 TV channels, we did a benchmark. So we sort of put DEI categories, programming. We for each category, we had sort of Black, Latinx, women, LGBTQ, Native Americans, and I think other set of sort of minorities or other groups that have traditionally been disadvantaged. And we looked across our programming based upon who the producer was, particularly who the on-air talent is, and other factors, and sort of classified. And we took a look at our programming overall and said, okay, here's where we're at, and what can we do to increase the overall diversity of our programming. So, on the broadcast side, we're looking at new sources. We've acquired some programs from various sources, and I will say, I know that PBS is working on this as well. They may not be moving as quickly as any of us would like. We were thrilled to put out the Black Church a little while ago, which is it's a WET production. So that was on, at least at our station, that was really big and we were very excited about. But we know we just have a lot more work to do, and we're benchmarking and trying to see through acquisitions how to increase that. On the, specifically on the passport and streaming side, I'll be honest, it's been a challenge. So we we have five, back on the broadcast, we have 5 channels, and the least diverse of our channels is our Weedy UK channel, which is basically our British drama channel. And it's frankly the least diverse channel we have. We have been able to acquire some broadcast rights for some great shows like Luther, which has a black lead. I don't know if you've watched it, but it's a great show. And there are others as well. But that's certainly, at this point, a fairly small minority. We've been trying to get streaming rights. We haven't been successful thus far. I think what we're going to continue to do, and maybe do even more going forward, is look for different sources for broadcast and for streaming. I think I might have mentioned yesterday we're exploring some other sources, but have not found sort of good, reliable sources for streaming as of yet. And even the ones that we found, I think I mentioned yesterday, GPB is working on something that the only program that I had heard of through that the efforts there, and there may be others, I honestly don't know, it has an all-white cast. So I think it's a challenge. It's not something, I think it's an important challenge. I think it's a challenge that faces public media, and we would just love to hear, we'll continue to work at this, but we'd love to hear insights from other stations. So I thanks again to Christina and Jodi for letting me join again, and I realize I did not answer that well yesterday. I'm sorry about that, but it's an incredibly important issue to our station and frankly to me personally, and we welcome other people's thoughts.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to ask those right now. And I also know that. And Jeff, you have been very open about giving your email address and talking directly, and I want to commend you for being open to having these difficult conversations because they're important to have. So thank you for that. We're not getting any immediate questions right now. I do know a lot of people are listening, and I will post your email address again, and if people want to reach out to you, they can.
Sure.
Jeff, do you have any final thoughts before we go?
No, just thank you, and looking forward to seeing people a little later at the happy hour. Isn't that happening soon?
Sure, sounds good. Thank you everyone so much for attending. Thank you, Jeff, for having this conversation. So we're gonna say goodbye. See you all soon. Have a great day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.